Live? That seems live. So I'm just staring at my feed for a second to see if this actually happens.
I'm keeping my mouth noises away from the mic.
I've never done this without scheduling a live stream, so I don't actually know what it shows up as for people that. Oh, okay, great, it's there.
You're about to find out if I have notifications turned on for you or not.
I don't think I turned them on for. I don't have them enabled for the app period, so I don't have notifications for it.
I don't think I have any notifications on my phone.
No, I just heard about a drinking game the other day though, where as soon as anybody gets notified, you have to drink, which I'm like, that's a pretty funny idea. And I would stay sober all night because everything is turned off all the time.
That is a funny. I mean, I saw a drinking game today on TikTok, but it was like a family, and they have what are those? Like a lazy Susan in the middle of the table, and there's 5 shot glasses of water and 1 shot glass of vodka, or something, clear.
Just like
and
a Russian
the game
roulette?
though is that. Yes, except no one is allowed to make the face. So that the idea is like you have to figure out who took it, which that's the only part that seems fun to me.
Right.
I don't like drinking. I don't like.
I do like
shots are disgusting.
the fun part about drinking games is the rules.
Yes,
like
which is
the drinking you
maybe
could
the
do at
lamest
any
thing
time,
we've
but
ever said. You're right. I just love when people just say like, here's some like rules, some structure we're going to abide by, and everyone goes, okay, well, we'll play that game.
you know what I loved that? Oh, cool! People are watching, so this is working. You know what I loved that Corridor Crew were doing for the Wilds of the Game of Life, where what was it? If anybody says the word mind, they have to do push-ups. So and this is just like always a rule, like no matter what you're doing at any point, if anybody says mind, they have to drop and do 10 or 20 push-ups or whatever.
That's a really fun idea to make culture in a studio space.
So Minecraft comes up all the time. So when there's like a team of people and they're constantly catching each other and it's for a vlog, it's hilarious. Like it builds this like ongoing story of tension, and it's pretty hilarious.
In particular, if it's not something they're even talking about in the vlog, but if you know the channel, right, it just always happens. And if it's your first, you'd be like,
totally.
What just
happened?
That's
the best way though. So for anybody watching right now, the way that we do these streams, by the way, this is the first time I've done it on the main channel. Usually I do it over on the podcast channel so that nobody watches me screw it up. But anybody that is subscribed to the main feed can watch this right now. And I've got Jesse Driftwood, and it hasn't started yet. I'm going to start the podcast officially in about 30 seconds or a minute or so. And we're going to ignore the chat, but you can throw things in there if you want. Marco's producing today, and he will be able to throw it up on screen. But we won't be talking about it.
Before you go live on the podcast, I'm just getting the food out of my teeth.
Oh my God. It's so unprofessional.
Hiding.
What have I gotten myself into? No, but you're the consummate professional that you would get the food out first rather than leave it in. I guess that's a sign of somebody that's been on camera before. And I do have this very unflattering B cam that I can cut to at any time if anybody wants to see how distorted my face.
If anyone doubts you have AirPod Pros or not.
Oh yeah, right. This is, by the way, sponsor of this episode, AirPods.
If you want to see these in the frame, I can pan
in the shallowest possible depth of field. According to the adapter here, this is at f1.0 using the.
Are you on the C70 now?
Yeah, this is the C70.
Oh, that's great. You know what's handy is I've got one right here.
What?
And you can talk about your image quality, and I can talk about the body.
Oh, this is great. Perfect. But keep in mind, we're mostly making this for the audio listeners because the video people don't count, or they count in a smaller number. So if you want better video content, then you should be subscribing to both the YouTube and the audio version, because right now the audio version's where everybody is. So we're all good, right? Everything's working. We can do the real thing. Okay. Get the food out of my mouth.
Is this why people subscribe to the channel, just so they can watch your guests?
Thank you. Food? I forgot to switch. Thanks, Marco. You saved the show. It would have just been the side of my head the whole time. Also,
I forgot you couldn't see that.
Right before I started. Okay, the show's not starting yet. Can somebody pass me a towel? I spilled coffee on my keyboard.
Oh my!
I'm reaching to start. And I spilled the rest of my coffee, which also means I don't have any coffee to drink.
Oh, I mean, let's be real, Tyler. It's the evening.
Thanks so much. Yeah, but that's why I need the coffee, because it's the evening.
You should be having herbal teas.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Do you know how tired I already am?
I don't. I slept 4 hours last night, and that's not bragging. That's actually saying, hey,
you're-
don't be a YouTuber,
You're
or
the
don't
one
be a
that should
procrastinator.
making coffees.
Maybe.
I saw your video.
Since
though.
pandemic, I've been on one a day.
What? But you're
Yeah,
like sponsored by coffee, aren't you?
I know. Oh, I went years and years and years, like minimum 3. I mean, not minimum. I'd say 3 basically every day.
Yeah.
Special
I
days
try to do
before.
maximum. I try to do maximum 3. 3's like I might
It
have.
is too much. It's too much because it was so that if I hadn't had my first coffee by
It just has been.
10 a.m., then I'd be have a crazy headache.
Yeah.
Like I had
Yeah,
built
the
up an
headaches are the
actual
only
addiction.
thing. Yeah. The headaches are the thing that make me miss it. I don't know of any other addiction feelings I'm feeling like I miss from it, but
Yeah.
my head hurts. That's the sign.
Yeah.
I don't feel more energetic when I drink coffee though. That's probably the other sign. It doesn't like really
me
pick me
neither.
up. But I do have them at the I have them for late night podcasts because like I've heard the episodes where you can tell that the day has already happened and I'm kind of like just slogging through it. So I'm like, you know what? For you guys out there, I'll sleep a little less tonight, but it'll be a little more hyper as this happens. So
Tyler, I'm just scrolling you up on my screen so that your eyes are just beneath my camera.
oh man, you are a professional. Okay, I'm going to tweet this before I really go live for real. Going live with @Jesse Driftwood.
Yeah, you don't think I won't retweet that?
I don't know.
That was
This is a
double
test. I don't not think.
I'm not
that.
sure what I said. You don't.
Wait,
not
I can't
think-
see you anywhere. Here. Take a photo of you. Oh, but I'm not in it. Here, take a photo of both of us. All right, here's the photo. Ready? There you go. Great. Use photo. Tweet. It's a really good photo. Okay. Should I start the
I am
real show now?
refreshing these. Well, not until I retweeted it. There we
Okay,
go.
you can retweet it.
Boom.
All right. That means we're
Retweet.
really live now.
And then the phone goes to the couch.
This is the thing I should have screwed up last time. No phone, man. I'm gonna be on my phone every moment I'm not talking. I'm gonna be just scrolling through.
Just see if anyone commented.
Just kidding. All right, here we go. Today we are here with Jesse Driftwood, who is back. You haven't been here for a while, Jesse. Thanks for coming. I've been trying to get you forever. We have so much to talk about. I can't believe it took
You know
this
what's
long.
funny? I thought I was going to say I've never been on the show. That's not true.
You've been on the show
C200 with Armando.
1.25 times, 1.5
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is a good time to bring you back though. Like this is a bit full circle of the narrative of your story on the podcast, which that Armando episode we were talking about both being ready to get the C200, ready to upgrade. And now we did both just upgrade to the C70. I don't think we talked about C200 in between because you weren't on after we had them. So it would be good to catch up on that a bit of a retrospective. But most of all, C70. That's what I want to hit on today.
Yep.
What's it been like so far? What have you learned using it? Are you happy with it? Are you going to sell it right away?
No.
I don't know. Everything C70. And then at the end of the episode, we'll go off topic a bit. But
Sweet.
let's start with this
I
camera.
pre-ordered day one. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was pretty much everything I wanted from a camera, which is that I loved shooting on cinema cameras from my days actually doing, not mostly just social media content. I loved using cinema cameras for everything they offered, right? Unlimited record time and good battery life and much better image quality, all sorts of things. But they're so big. They're so big and annoying. And I saw the C70 and then hearing that it was more or less the image out of a C300 Mark III in a body that's maybe smaller than a 1DX with all the connectivity that I need, I was sold right away,
Yeah.
And I'm not so obsessed with pursuing ultimate picture quality necessarily, not to knock this at all. It's amazing picture quality, but I wasn't worried that it was going to be bad picture quality or that my work would suffer if I didn't instead get a Komodo. So specs I
Right.
wanted, size was pretty close to good. So I pre-ordered it day one, and I've been using it since.
I wish I had done that too, because it took me forever to get it. Basically,
I was
when I was ready to pull the trigger was in December. I was waiting for our credit card to like reset. There's like, rollover date where it's like, okay, now it's on the next month. So just like, okay, I want this to be on the next month's credit card bill. And the camera that was sitting in the store disappeared in that day, so I wasn't able to get it. And then it took more than 2 more months to get it back in stock. So I had this very extended wait. Yeah, I was ready for it. And it did take me a few days to talk myself into it, a few weeks maybe even, because I loved the idea of the Komodo. I mean, any listeners or viewers will know how much I wanted the Komodo to be my next camera.
The Komodo.
It is so great. Like it is such an exciting camera. It still is. It's the one that inspired me the most when it was in my hand. Like it was thrilling in a way that most physical cameras aren't. It feels like a Hasselblad, and the C70 doesn't have that effect on me. Like it doesn't feel sexy in my hand, but it was all about pragmatism. Like I'm looking at the list of like, what do each of these do? I'm like, massive battery life on the C70, better than the C200, better than, I think it's probably better than like the R5s and stuff too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Insane record times because you can use SD media. It's going to be able to plug into the more common card readers that I have. It's going to play more nicely with my Canon lenses. The autofocus is going to be a little more trustworthy at first. It's got that Canon speed booster adapter so that I'm going to be able to trust that full frame feature that, there are ways of modifying the Komodo to do that, but they're not first party. So like, there's just all these details that I'm like, this is really adding up to, this is telling me what I should do here. Yeah. So in the end, that's what I pulled the trigger on, and absolutely no regrets. I think it was the right thing. And by the way, we both have them physically with us. So audio listeners, this is incentive for you to watch this on YouTube if you feel like it. Won't be necessary, but I can cut to extreme close-ups of this C70 that is right beside me so you can see what it's doing. And meanwhile, Jesse can show you the body. But let's. I kind of want to like cover like everything that anybody might want to know if they don't. Actually, if they just got this camera and they're trying to figure it out, or if they're not sure if this is the camera for them. I want to like hit on all those points that we've discovered along the way of using it. First of all, quick retrospective. How did the C200 work out for you? Like, how did it turn out as a camera that you needed in your life?
I had a love-hate relationship with it. I had autofocus issues on mine, so that was kind of an annoying. It would pretty consistently back focus, so it wouldn't hit my ear or my eyes. It would hit my ears, and that kind of killed my experience overall because, I was rarely using the autofocus of it, which is one of the big things that I use on every shoot. And the 8-bit is fine out of that camera, but I did not love C-Log 3 in 8-bit on it. So when I finally started to actually experiment with shooting RAW on it, that's when I started to actually love the camera, because the RAW images are stunning. They're significantly better than the 8-bit in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's part of my issue is that the 8-bit is also like, it's very compromised, more so than the 8-bit. Even on the R, there are things about the color matrix, like the way colors work. 8-bit on the C200, some colors are weird and kind of wrong. Like if there's a saturated cyan or certain magentas, they'll like radically shift. They'll go completely wrong in 8-bit. In RAW, that does not happen. Like the mapping of color tones is different in 8-bit and inaccurate. Like it can be very weird. And so I'm really surprised how often I hear about people that are only using the C200 as an 8-bit camera. That's really common, actually, and that's what I'm shooting on right now. It's what you're seeing, but that's crazy to me. Like everything good about this is the RAW. That's why it's a great camera to me. And if you skip shooting RAW on it, like don't bother. Just don't even think about the C200. Did you have problems with
one for cheap?
Did you have problems with the noise overall? Like a lot of people have complained and struggled with in RAW noise floor.
Yeah. In RAW, I shoot a lot of stuff with this gray background behind me here, and even when I would light the whole scene in RAW 800 ISO, I was like, I wish that was just a bit less grainy. So I started experimenting with shooting at like 400 and 200 ISO, which I had always just avoided on cinema cameras. I was like staying at the native, wouldn't drop below, and then I decided I would actually do some tests myself. And that's when I started shooting 400, 200 ISO in my own studio lit shots. And then the noise wasn't such an issue. And I found if I was out shooting in the city at nighttime, an actual dark environment, the noise doesn't really bother me there. The noise bothers me when it's an environment that I have full control over.
Yeah,
and I know it shouldn't be noisy. Yeah.
Did you intentionally overexpose it? Like I always aim for at least one full stop over, more so 1.5. Like 1.5 is the sweet spot for me as long as the highlights aren't clipping. But if I ever expose it correctly, when I get the footage home, I look at it like, oh, I underexposed it because now the noise is crazy. And I think a lot of people were only shooting it that way. They're shooting it correctly. So they're like, oh, the noise is out of control and this is unusable. But to me, it's just that you just have to rate it.
The right camera. Yeah.
Yeah. You have
and that
to.
took some learning for me too.
Yeah.
So I just didn't do the tests at first that I needed to, both in the 8-bit or the RAW. I bought it and I had projects and stuff. I just started shooting with it, and I had experience with the C100 and the C100 Mark II. I had used the C300. So I didn't second guess myself to start shooting on it without testing it. But then as these I'll say issues or whatever were coming up, after, I don't know, like a year, I finally decided I'm going to run some tests and see when I like the images and when I don't like the images. And that pushed me towards liking the camera more again.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't like it, but
it's so worth spending that time, that like talking about the testing. Anybody out there, when you get a new camera, it's good to watch other people's reviews. Like definitely watch our reviews for sure. Like watch all the camera tests that we do.
Link in bio.
But you have to do, you have to do these tests yourself though. You like, if you don't go through the paces of like seeing what exposing to the right and to the left looks like and rating it at 800 ISO versus 200, you will hate yourself later. You'll be on a job and you'll back yourself into a corner. I did the video when I was talking about like how to expose your camera was when I had just gotten the C200 and I didn't realize how important the native ISO rating was, because it was my first cinema camera that I'd owned. So I'm like, yeah, I know you should, but whatever. I don't know. I didn't always. I shot it like ISO 200 and stuff. And I was looking at the dynamic range from these raw images. I'm like, this looks like crap. Like this looks like a R. This is not a ton of extra stops. Then I realized like, oh, if you go anything below 800, the highlights just get crushed. They just disappear. Like you're throwing them away. So yeah, it's basically, if you're shooting in a darker environment, that's when you lower the ISO, which is very counterintuitive.
It was very backwards. Yeah. Counterintuitive experience.
But so in the end, you were enjoying the images that you got out of it. Like you did use raw.
Really
like when I was seeing it on your channel, they were raw usually.
It depends on the video. So the Fuji X100V video, that was all shot in RAW. And actually, one thing that I found kind of magical about the C200 RAW files, which just solidified me shooting RAW on that camera, which even though is probably a bad idea, was when I would even just apply my first Rec 709 conversion LUT onto the RAW clip, the blacks were always pure black. And I don't mean zero IRE. I mean, they were saturationless in a way that the 8-bit never was. The 8-bit images, I always had to play with the shadows and, roll off the saturation and try and fight it between magenta and the green. But the raw images, even if I messed up the white balance, the black was black.
Yeah. No, you're totally hitting on this thing I always had a hard time describing or really nailing down, but what I loved about that transform, which I use like modifications of the Alexa LUT. I'm not sure what you used, but much prefer them to the Canon LUT. The Canon LUT looks more like technical. Like I see more separation in skin tones, like magentas in the skin will pop. So if somebody has, great example, if they have a pimple, it will be more red and more separated, whereas the Alexa LUT will smooth out that contrast of the skin a lot more. But what I loved is that it was like, it just looked clean and correct when you first transformed it. And every camera I had ever worked with before that was like, you transform it and you're like, okay, now I'll figure out how to fix it.
Right.
Like,
now what? Yeah.
Yeah. And this was the first time I was like, oh, it just looks right. Like this is what an image should look like. Yeah. I've grown very addicted to that. I absolutely love it. And the other thing I loved before we move on to C70 is that as you bring the exposure down, so like I said, it exposed by about 1.5 stops over, as I slide the raw exposure down, has to be the raw exposure slider. It can't be just like the curves in Final Cut or something. It needs to be like, so I'd use Resolve. As I slide it down, the density and like the thickness of the image would like, it felt like it was like filling up with color. Like it would become richer, and the mids and the lower mids would just become like appropriately saturated. I don't even know really how to describe it, but like as you would lower it, the saturation would feel correct. And if you do this with 8-bit files or even 10-bit, take C-Log files from the Canon R5 or a Sony or whatever, bring them down, and the highlights will just like instantly start to lose saturation, and you'll realize you're only really bringing down the mids, and something weird will happen to the blacks.
Absolutely.
Like it doesn't feel right as you lower the exposure, and it just feels so.
Like if you imagine you overexposed and your skin's like lost its saturation, the annoying thing was you'd try and pull it back, and it never became skin like it would look like had you exposed it lower, right? It was always like it's not clipped, but it didn't have saturation or texture. It was very, very bizarre.
Yeah. So this is all actually great context to set us up for the C70, because maybe this will be the jumping off point. My biggest disappointment before even buying a C70, I'd seen this from other people's tests, so I'm aware of it. That's where we lose the quality giving up RAW. I wish the C70 could do RAW. Like that'd be really nice. There was no part of me that's surprised that it can't. Like you couldn't do it to the SD cards. This is not what this camera's supposed to be. It wouldn't make any sense. But what you lose is the saturation in those overexposed areas. So in the direct comparisons next to the C300 Mark III, it's like when your sky is right on the edge of clipping, like it's really bright. In the C300, you can, if you're shooting RAW, you can pull back those highlights and they still feel very blue. It's still held on to that saturation. And so many of the tests, I want to do a video just telling people they're testing cameras wrong. When I see people doing the tests, it's like, okay, maybe you shot a scene with relatively high dynamic range, but did you try to recover those highlights at all? You just left them kind of floating at the top. And the issue for me is that I want to be able to pull them back down, right? So let me target the blues and bring that blue back in so that we don't have this clipping feeling to the sky. And that's something we're giving up a bit in the C70, because the 10-bit RAW thing, that's where it starts to fall apart a little bit. So, biggest thing I want to know what you've been doing, and that I still need to do more tests on. How have you been exposing the C70? How have you been shooting with it?
I've done the same thing again. I've been pretty lazy about it, but more recently I've actually been.
What did I just say? I thought I said everybody.
No, I've been learning Canon's implementation of false color on this camera, which has been quite helpful, because now they do their colors a little bit differently. So even as recently as this week, I was finally just giving in and using the false colors on the monitor, which is what a great feature. And I've just been trying to use Canon's general guideline for exposure on C-Log 2 on these cameras. And I think it's like this gray right before it hits pink. I might have the colors wrong right now, for skin tone anyways, in a YouTube environment, right? It's not a mood. It's just my skin.
Yeah. It uses the same, false color mapping as Alexa's do. Like that's where it got that pink green thing, and I actually really dislike that map. So I don't know if you use external monitors ever, but other monitors have had different maps. So I had seen what else it can look like before. And what's really nice is if you map it on, like, do you use external monitors or not so much? I don't imagine you using them.
If I need it.
You're usually smaller rig kind of guy. But if you throw a small HD on there, for example, you can create your own map. And I was just working on this the other day so that I've got things like a few different shades of green for the skin tones, so that I can see like, here's what underexposed by one stop on skin looks like. Here's correctly exposed, and here's one stop over on the skin. And the reason this is so helpful is now you see those ratios, because this is like so in the weeds. When false color, the one that we're talking about that's built into the camera, as it like moves through the scene, you just see a sliver of false color like passing over objects, right? If you hold up a gray card, this is kind of how you'd use these. You hold up the gray card and you'd see the gray card filled with like, okay, 18% gray is supposed to be all green. So now I know my key light is set correctly. But if there's a human in front of the camera, it's just this little bit of green and pink and yellow, like moving through the scene very subtly, these little slivers. And it doesn't represent ratios. So I find it way more helpful to have a false color that like you can see especially seeing that, like, what is one stop under, what is one stop over,
Right,
because
you can
then
visually see the ratio. Yeah,
totally, yeah,
that's
you're like,
so cool.
oh, now my back wall is down a little, which I always want.
Right.
I always want the wall behind me to be a little lower than I am, and maybe my highlight I always like to be one over, or whatever your preferences are. You can just spot it every time, and especially if you're trying to match shots in a scene, you can see that whole scene's image ratio. So it's like, okay, we needed to do a reverse shot and match that lighting. Turning on the false color suddenly shows you, like, oh, all the ratios line up, even though we moved lights, a few feet in every direction. You can see that relationship of just by glancing at the colors. So
Tyler, you're about to sell me on a monitor right now.
I mean, a monitor is a big thing to carry around to do that. But
we have director's monitors here, and just old monitors from the years. There's 4 of us functionally that, outside of pandemic, work here full time. So everyone's gear is here. So there's just stuff at our disposal. So sometimes I'll use great monitors, and sometimes I'm on we've got an old Aperture, I don't know, VS5, V5. I don't know.
They don't do those anymore. Does Aperture still make monitors? I feel like they stopped. Yeah.
No, it's old. I mean, it's not a great monitor. It's very damaged.
Well, does it have false color? That's all that matters. But also, really important difference between the C70 and C200 is the C200 couldn't output C-Log 2. This killed me. Like, you couldn't preview the actual image that you're shooting. So if I sent that signal out to an external monitor, my false color was completely useless, like literally useless. It was
That's
all
something
wrong.
People complained about since the dawn of that camera. I'm surprised Canon, as a company that at least has done, good firmware updates. They're not anti-firmware update. I'm surprised that didn't get fixed, because I don't think that encroached on other cameras. I get why they didn't add 10-bit. I understand it. It's annoying and probably stupid, but I understand it. Not fixing that C-Log 2 monitoring was just weird. Very weird.
Yeah. No, it really drove me crazy. But I feel like it was like niche enough. I didn't hear enough people complaining about it that I really expected it to change. Mm-hmm. Most people were more saying they wanted 10-bit, which I'm not surprised didn't happen.
No, I'm not surprised about that.
But we've got 10-bit now.
On everything.
So overall, as these files come in and you're exposing it to false, you're basically exposing it like the way Canon recommends if you're using false color, which is good.
Yeah, more or less.
And do you find you're adjusting it much in post? Is it basically the way you want out of the box?
I'd say 90% of the time, I just use now Canon's supplied C-Log 2 conversion LUT. I throw it on, and I'm just happy. I will still end up doing a grade afterwards, but even in this video, I'm sure there's whole sections I forgot to grade, and it's just the conversion LUT straight onto the footage. But if I have already exported the video, let's say, and I'm rewatching it before upload, and I notice, my grade adjustment layer wasn't on top of that section of clips, I won't go back and fix it.
Yeah, I've been a little tempted to I'm more okay now kind of bypassing that, but I am I don't know. I'm working on my LUT strategy. I want to do like some serious testing this year and really
make some and I'll buy them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because I feel like there's so much potential in what you can extract from this, especially because, if you do that color space transform and resolve, the amount of similarities you can get to Alexa footage, like it's remarkable. It really can get so close. So any of those Alexa LUTs start to like just feel like an Alexa in a way that's very exciting for somebody that's spent just a tiny fraction of that amount of money on their camera. So
Heather, I'm glad I don't have any friend because I don't want to do all this work, but I want.
This is the fun part.
Well, sometimes it's fun. Fun is.
I would recommend you to explore the Alexa LUT a little bit more. I'll send you the modified one that I have. Yeah, I'll send you mine, and it's like just based off of it, but recalibrated because they're not quite the same, and it's nicer. I promise it's a little nicer.
Well, this is exactly why I'm glad you're my friend, because I don't want to research which Alexa. Just say, Tyler, what's the best one? I'll do that.
That's what I'm here for.
I trust you because you know what you're talking about, and your images look great. Because sometimes people online, maybe they do know what they're talking about, but if the image looks bad or lazy or sloppy, then, how do I
hate to say
it?
And I'm glad that none of those people are listening, but yeah, it's true. Like sometimes you see like a really deep dive technically and you're like, but I don't like the way it turned out in the end. So what do I do with all this information?
Yeah. Throw it out.
I'm gonna turn to my left, look at this physical camera in real life. What else have I been thinking about it? How do you feel about the actual body design? First of all, this is made for you and I because it has a vertical screw mount on it, which I feel like everybody else talking about this sort of just makes it, they literally make a joke about it. They're like, oh, yes, and if you want to do that cheese ball vertical thing, like that trendy passing fad that'll go away any day now. We threw that in there as a joke. And I'm like, it's just so naive. Like it's so unthoughtful.
Yeah, I've flown around the world to shoot commercials for companies that they only wanted vertical. The entire project was shot vertically because they need social media marketing more than they need TV commercials now.
Yes, seriously. And it's like, this is real money in your pocket. And guess what? Anybody listening, you don't get paid less because it was vertical. Like your rate is the same. The budgets for online advertising are not less. Well, okay, they're less than TV. But they're still like, they're not less than the range that I'm in. The commercial stuff that I do is not TV anyway. So like, if I'm doing something for either they're going to run it on YouTube or they're going to run it on their website or they're going to run it on Instagram and Snapchat, and it should look as good. The only argument not to use the real camera is that there's often an advantage of having that grittier, more realistic look on social media. But that's not the camera.
That's another story altogether.
That's a different thing. Yeah.
But
yeah, so have you been...
The whole vertical thing, I think it's funny. I understand that filmmakers, like good, really quality, story-driven filmmakers that want to move people's emotions, I get why they think vertical video is stupid. But it's like, if you are all making, I don't know, like Subway commercials, you don't get to just hate on vertical video because you're also doing jobs for money that you don't think are ideal or you don't think are great, whatever. It's just, it is what it is. You want to make money doing the thing you love. You're going to have to take some jobs that aren't awesome.
There's no limit to how long I could complain about how ignorant the whole concept is of dismissing vertical. Like, I'm speaking to figurative whoever's complained about this in the comments, which there's plenty of them out there. I'm sure all the listeners, but it's like, it's just so unthoughtful. Like, do you know how many people are staring at their phone all day long? They're holding it vertically. They're not going to rotate their phone just because your art was shot in anamorphic. Like, and it appears as the next slide in their Instagram stories. Like, you want to convince Instagram to go horizontal with their stories because of your artistic integrity. Like, guess what? Nobody's going to change their behavioral patterns. And horizontal does not look better when somebody's holding the phone vertically. It looks worse because it's not filling up any part of the screen. It's a postage stamp all of a sudden. Like, the reality of use is like, you want to optimize for how people are using it. I think people are sad to see the shift towards vertical because they always imagined that everything they would ever shoot would end up in cinemas. And guess what? iPhones have become very popular, phones in general. So that's just not reality. People aren't looking at your phones in movie theaters, and movie theaters are closing,
Tyler,
unfortunately.
You really went in. That was wonderful. We can keep going if you want. But yeah, the vertical plate is actually handy. In particular, literally, I had to shoot a vertical time lapse in here recently, and I could just thread this the switch pod right into the bottom of it. Which even if I had a ball head on this, right, it's not gonna hold up vertical. So if you have to get a vertical shot, at least it'll balance on the tripod.
It's a huge advantage. I mean, I had mounted the C200 vertically a bunch of times, and it was a nightmare. It was it barely worked. It was so uncomfortable and always a little bit dangerous.
You know what though? Shooting handheld vertical on the C200 was wonderful. You could flip the display into just a really great position that was forward of the handle, right above the lens. It felt like you had an external monitor.
I do have some bad things to say about vertical because I want to walk back a tiny bit. And I think maybe you've said this somewhere as well.
Did you just see a bunch of comments come in or something?
No. I don't know. Somebody, Marco, if there's any great comments, put them up on the screen. But no. Okay, so I can't see what's happening in this live stream. By the way, this is being streamed live. Anybody listening later, but if you look at the world, it does present itself horizontally to us.
Absolutely.
That is, our visual field reconstructs the world into a more horizontal context. I feel like what aspect ratio would you say that you actually see the world in? Like what feels the most real world to you?
Right now, I have the way light is. It's pretty wide, but it's like 235, like 235 to 1. No, I have quite a wide field of view.
Yeah. Well, but it's also like, how much do you ignore the height? I guess, right. Yeah, 235 feels right. I've been enjoying 16:9 a little more lately, actually. Yeah. Especially noticing how many films are, what's the film version? It's like 185 or something. I don't remember the number that's very close to 16:9 and is a traditional film ratio. And it's funny that we have this thing where we put black bars on everything to make it cinematic, but then you watch big budget cinematic as hell movies and they're basically 16:9. So
yeah. And I mean, back into the commercial world, the rise of 4:3 popularity right now is astonishing. Totally. Like every new music video, every Ariana Grande music video right now is in 4:3.
Is it? I didn't know that, but
it is everywhere.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and is the Justice League remix actually being released in 4:3 or square or whatever? I saw that it's like,
oh, I did not hear about that.
The trailer I saw is in the like native IMAX 70mm aspect ratio, which is very close to square. Like it looks like a square on your computer screen.
Was that size just for anamorphic though? Like, is that why?
I don't know what they were doing with that. Okay. I don't know what they were doing with that specific one. I really was noticing, and we talked about this on the Tenet episode a lot, is that they cut back and forth between IMAX footage in the Blu-ray of that, and you really see the difference of like 70mm and then this other like 65mm widescreen. I think it's spherical. It's not anamorphic.
65mm.
But you see it. You see the ratio jumping sometimes shot to shot, and I'm like, why didn't you just stick with one? Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. But that was such a tangent. Shooting vertically on this thing. Did you assign the second record button to be record, the waveform button, or did you not do that?
No, I actually think I might have the waveform button right now to digital IS. I just always have the waveform on, more or less.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
And you can toggle it on and off from the touchscreen, so it's...
Yes. Okay. Touchscreen stuff is huge on this, and that is actually something that's hard to go back to with the C200 and also with Canon R. So do you even have an R anymore? Or are you just R5?
I have an R6. Well, I have an R somewhere.
R6.
But I have an R and an R6, yeah.
The record button on the screen is surprisingly a game changer.
So handy.
It sounds like nothing, but a great example is like sometimes I'm putting the camera on a tripod. I was doing this the other day, and all the shots need to line up perfectly. The camera can't move. Pressing a physical record button makes you much more likely to slightly twist the camera, to slightly bump it, and pressing the screen. Yeah. So I love that.
The whole new menu system on this touchscreen for changing settings is astonishingly better than every other Canon cinema camera. Yeah. It's so nice that you just touch the one little touchscreen button, and it's like, here's 10 of your most recent. And then you can go into another touchscreen menu. And then there's that Pages menu that kind of looks Blackmagic design-y.
Yeah. Which
the crop,
good design. I love the way Blackmagic does it.
Good. So good. Yeah, Blackmagic might have the best, I think, menus on a camera that I've used, anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I haven't really used one, but
usability on the screen, I think, is maybe my favorite thing about it. It's top 5 for sure.
Right. No, it's pretty good. How have the files been for you in editing? Are you shooting into LongUp or All-I or?
I've been going back and forth between the HEVC actually, because I heard someone say that even though their 16-inch MacBook couldn't handle the R5 H.265, they said the C70 H.265 played fine, and that sentence alone intrigued me enough to just start shooting in H.265 to see if that would be the case. So I've been just jumping between different codecs quite frequently to see if I'm noticing much of a difference, even in
but you don't have an answer
image
yet?
Or in editing. I don't have an answer yet. It's all of it has edited just fine on my MacBook. I have yet to have an issue.
What is your MacBook?
It's like late 2019 16-inch MacBook. It's pretty beefy. It's the like full i9, 64 gigs of RAM. It was an expensive MacBook. a year ago that is being
Yeah.
outperformed by $400 iPads now.
Well, can't run Final Cut on an iPad yet, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm on the slightly older, because mine's 2018, before the 16-inch, so mine's 15-inch, and I'd been shooting the Longop HEVC, but what you're saying makes me think I should try the H.265 because yeah, R5 footage. This is like under talked about with the R5. It just sucks to edit. Like it is so inconvenient and really slows down your whole life.
One of the biggest reasons that I decided to switch away from the R5 in favor of the C70. So when I left the C200, it wasn't for another cinema camera. I just realized that so little of my work was requiring an actual cinema camera. And I would love to go back to just having one or two of the same body. And I was hoping the R5 was going to be that. It was going to be great for video, great for photos. And the images in video, I love them. I didn't even have an issue with C-Log most of the time. I could make the images that I wanted because I found the shadows in the mids were so much cleaner than on the R that I could drop the exposure, lift it, and feel like I had the dynamic range I wanted. But editing the files just absolutely killed that camera for me.
Yeah. Yep. Same here.
The way I often make my YouTube videos will be, I'll shoot a scene, and because I don't necessarily know what's next, I'll just start editing it. And in the editing process, I'm like, do you know what would be good next? And I'll go out and shoot that, and I'll bring it back. So the process is, it's not like I've shot all day, here's my footage, let's dump it, let it convert. So when I'm in a time crunch on an edit, and I decide there's 5 shots that would just be awesome here, and I go out and shoot them, I hated that I still had to bring them into Final Cut and create either proxies or optimized media in order to edit it. It just drove me nuts.
Yeah, I ended up being in a situation where it's like proxies were mandatory. I almost like didn't even want to shoot 4K with it anymore. The thing that kind of keeps me, I don't own I didn't buy an R5 or an R6 after wanting one for a very long time because I try not to buy too many cameras. Like as much as I love them, I don't love
you do a good job of it.
Putting a ton of money into them all the time because like I could just buy a camera every month if that's what I want to do, and it wouldn't actually make my life that much better. So I think it's worth waiting, and I did end up waiting so long that now I just still haven't upgraded, and the and it's basically because like the R is just still so good for photography. Like the sensor,
great.
Sort of like peaked a little with the 5D Mark IV. There isn't an important difference for stills with the others.
Yeah, I agree.
So all of the important differences are usability. It feels much better to use those cameras.
Autofocus, joystick. Yeah. Shooting experience is
the thing I love them for video though, that like makes me want to still have one in my back pocket, like that plus a C70 is a better kit, is that image stabilization is just so rock solid. Like
it is so good.
Yeah, there were professional shoots.
The wobble.
Well, yes, but there are ways you can use it.
I just always keep it off.
But that's when you're like more vlogging, right? You're doing something super active. The things I'll use it for are like, or had been using it for when I was pouring it long term, was like I would do sort of like just push-ins and push-outs, right? Like little handheld dolly moves where I'm just like moving around. And as long as you're not doing anything weird, it just looks like a gimbal. Like you know, if you're being solid, it will reinforce all of that and just feel totally smooth. And you can even step carefully. Like you can get a lot of really, and that just doesn't happen on the C70, even with the digital IS. Like the digital IS is also risky. It can totally screw up a shot if you
the like
yeah like targets on
for those listeners, that was my hands going up and down because the
the sound effect covered it perfectly.
What does it do? Whoop, 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 whoop.
That's it. But you've been using it still, like you use the digital IS?
Occasionally, just if I know I'm like running super fast, and if I'm shooting out of a car window, something like that, I'll turn it on.
And it hasn't ruined anything for you yet?
With that. No, I haven't had any shots from the digital IS on the C70 ruin it for me. But I have seen people give clear examples of it. I know it's a thing.
Right. Yeah, I just did it on my first shoot for and it was basically that like it was somebody holding a cell phone shot, and I was like, okay, I just got to get this one out real quick. So I didn't put a tripod down. I was doing it by hand, and it was just a hand holding a phone, and bokeh in the background, all blur in the background. So it really wanted to track that hand.
Right.
And yeah, total wobble all behind it. So
Yeah.
it's safest for wide shots, especially if everything's in focus. Like that's when
Yeah.
you're going to be
I
okay.
always assumed originally before I'd seen these issues that the digital IS was using some kind of gyro data in the camera and adjusting for it. I didn't realize that it was an image tracking, like on the digital. Obviously, I know it's digital, but on the final step of the chain, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's a weird effect. It's weird that that's what the effect is. It looks so crazy.
But I would rather not have IBIS in the C70 than not have ND filters. So.
Oh my God, ND filters. Okay, this is so much of why I'll talk about why I chose the C70 and not, let's say, an A7S III or whatever else there is out there,
or an FX3 or
Yeah, I feel like you can just match those cameras. Specifically, like let's say I am thinking about A7S III. That's like the next lowest price camera that will probably get you about the same image quality. I know it's like Canon colors, Sony colors, whatever. The Sonys look amazing.
You're splitting hairs. You could make them look identical for sure.
Totally. And look at somebody that's a good shooter and they're making beautiful work on these Sonys.
Yeah. And in fact, the A7S would probably be sharper.
Yeah, actually, totally. I mean, there are some advantages to it, I bet. The killer for me is no NDs and no XLR, no preamped mics, no always on board, be able to just plug it in thing. That is but that's huge for me. The more that I've spent time with internal NDs on the C200, the more I'm like, I never want to go back. It's hard to.
It is hard to just be like threading ND filters onto each lens and then thinking about step-up rings. And sometimes you take the ND filter off of a lens that needed a step-up ring, but you didn't realize that the ring came with it. It's more of a hassle than it's worth most of the time, in my opinion.
And the lens that's sitting on the C70 in my hands right now is the 20 millimeter, the Sigma 20.
Yeah, 1.4. I use that lens all the time.
I love this lens so much because you can get that super shallow depth of field. Oh man, don't tease me with your Komodo talk. You can get to that super shallow depth of field, and it's great lens, whatever, all the reasons. But it's got the bulbous front of the lens and an integrated lens hood, so you can't screw anything onto this. So to me, I was like, okay, so cool. I go get a Komodo or an A7S III or any of these things that don't have an integrated ND system, and all of a sudden this is not a lens I can use outdoors. Like I can't shoot at 1.4. I can't.
Before the C70, I had never shot with shallow depth of field on that lens outside in full frame because I had it on the C200 and it's an okay lens on that as well, but it's not the look of 20 millimeter 1.4. No. So the C70 with the adapter, it's the first time I've really gotten to shoot video how I want, anywhere I want with that lens.
Totally. Same here. That's actually, this specific setup is so much of what I was excited for. And the way I've got it right now, it has the adapter on there, which took me a little while to get a hold of, but I feel like it's a little bit necessary accessory. So add $1,000 if you're considering the C70. It's necessary. It's so good. It's so good.
I'm actually excited. I want to shoot some specific projects coming up soon that will involve late night adventure hiking with friends. And I'm hoping to shoot the whole thing handheld on the C70 and the Sigma 20. It's just 20 millimeters is a really cool focal length that I don't think you see a whole lot of. You see a lot of 16, you see a lot of 24, but that 20 range I think is, I don't know, it's cool. And with such shallow depth of field, it's so versatile. You can get in close with people and have it feel intimate, but you can also shoot at night. I could shoot around a fire. Great lens.
Well, so what's living on your C70 most of the time right now?
Most of the time is the Sigma 20. Right now, there's a 16-35 on it, the old Mark II one.
That's the one
and that's just because I was going to shoot a bit of vloggy stuff on this. Because I did shoot the vloggy stuff on this the other day.
Was your
almost always the 20.
I guess that was your last video that I was just watching that had your A-roll shot on that 16-35? Because I was looking at this is the Insta360 video.
Field on it.
No, yes, but no. What I was noticing was the chromatic aberration off to the side, by a window side. And I'm like, that's totally that lens. Because same thing, that lens, I've had it forever. I spent so much on it that I don't really want to sell it and lose a ton of money on it and buy a new one. But it is not great. considering how expensive it is. It's like there's a lot of optical defects.
It's another reason that when I got rid of the R5 and went to the C70, that I got an R6. Well, I also got a great deal on my R6, and I got a package of stuff like a North Face jacket. That was weird.
Okay.
But one of the reasons is that 15 to 35, I love it so much, and it's just not the same on the C70, right? Yeah. I loved having that 15 mil was so much better than this 16 to 35 is.
Yes, so absolutely.
I'm okay with using whatever.
I don't think there was a great like ultra wide option for Canons until that. It feels like, because I don't think the 1635 Mark III was like way better either. I think it is still just fine.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Mark III I never had many issues with. I think like that 11
you had
24.
Both? Okay.
Right. No, I had borrowed that from Canon for a while, and I had rented it a couple times for weddings and stuff. Oh yeah, I think that 11 to 24 f4, I never got to use it, but people raved about that lens. So maybe that was the first good ultra wide.
F4 just feels so. I'm just so over F4. Like I need. I really want things to be blurry. Like I really
remember
do.
when we were kind of just like knocking on pretentious cinematographers, and
yeah, but you got to be pretentious about something.
Yeah. Right.
What I am thinking, I kind of want to be my full-time lens, because on the C200 it was the 1835. That was always on there because it was right for most things most of the time. 1.8 is about as fast as you can really get in any zoom. But the funny thing is like the depth of field. I did this on a few different conversion websites, and I don't know what is really true, but it came out to be something like equivalent to like 24 millimeters at f2.9, which is
not
that
had been my testing too.
Fast or shallow.
Well, if you compared, people thought about that. It's like, that's the 24 to 70 for crop sensors. I'm like, it's not. That's like a 28 to 50 f2.9.
Yeah,
like
it's pretty compromised.
If you go from that on a C200 to, an R on a 24 to 70, I'm not saying the image is better, but that focal range is more useful. It is a better lens.
There are bad things about that 1835. Like everybody kind of should buy one if you happen to need that range. It is very useful, and I used it a lot, but I don't think people criticize it enough, because one thing, the barrel distortion is the worst of any of the lenses that I use regularly. Whenever I set up A-roll shots and I have a table in it, if the table line is straight, you see a huge warp. You see it bowing up to the sides every time. And I'm like, this doesn't bother anybody else. Am I the only one that thinks this is not what a lens should be doing? Actually, it's what I'm
If anyone
just
asks,
shooting
just say
right
you
now,
shot an anamorphic.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But I like to, I don't know. It's not what I'm like. Yeah, I don't get any of the benefits of anamorphic.
It's a different thing. Yeah, for sure.
And
I also just found that focal range kind of boring.
Right. Yeah. So, what I'm thinking of doing, also another boring focal length. I think what will end up being my full-time lens on here that I don't own yet, but I'm probably going to do the 24 to 35 2.0 Sigma. What do you think of that?
Interesting. That's a lens that it did intrigue me, but
so
I never tried it.
It's super clean. Like it's very precise. It doesn't have that
honker
distortion.
Of a lens. Yeah.
Yeah. It's chunky. It's sharp. It's super sharp. I can just shoot at 2.0 all the time. 35 2.0, I will definitely on a full frame modified sensor will be pretty darn blurry. And I think the first time that got me thinking about it was that's the main lens that Marquez uses for A-roll shots. He uses the cinema version. And, you look at the shots, it's like, that's clean. Like that's very, there's just nothing to say about it. It's like the lens falls away, which is sometimes very appropriate. And I don't feel like I have enough lenses that are like that.
On YouTube.
It's just so clean.
In
you know what I mean?
Like YouTube image and cleanliness. Yeah. He's got it nailed.
And I've always been frustrated. Yeah. What?
Well, it is a bummer that this camera is an RF mount for the sake of RF lenses, because that 28 to 70,
right?
Could you imagine? I would take a 28 to 70 f2 over the 24-35 personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. But the thing is, like, I do think overall that RF is exactly what I want this to be, because I have that full frame option.
Agreed. Yeah, and I also
Same
imagine
reason.
Canon's going to make specific lenses for it.
Yes, I sure hope so. I mean, I need Canon to start making some like compact primes. That is the big missing spot, in my opinion. There's the 35 1.8, which I have and is not great, really bad vignetting and stuff. But it's the right size. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I have that at least.
A series of
but
those lenses would be good.
Yeah, there
But I
needs
also
to be a
think
whole range.
they're going to have to do crop sensor lenses. I think they will.
Right. Yes.
For RF
will they?
eventually.
Yeah,
So
I guess so.
I think they will. People have talked about eventually doing, a 7D type RF lens or camera. So it would make sense if they've got 2 crop sensor RF bodies to make 1 or 2 crop lenses, if only just on the wide end, right? The part of the range you can't get in full frame.
That's actually okay. That will almost certainly happen, and I hope it does.
Yeah, a 10 to 20 or who knows.
What else about the camera specifically before we like stray too far off? What am I not thinking?
Oh,
I mean, there is so much to it. Like I'm not running out of ideas, but
there's things that I love and despise about the body. So this is my first cinema camera ever that turns on like a 5D.
Oh my God, that is so huge.
It's the best thing about this from a cinema camera standpoint. You just turn it on and you can shoot. Every other cinema camera, this isn't a Canon thing. This is a Canon, Panasonic, Sony, Red, Arri. They take time. They take 15, 20 seconds and that's probably on the fast end, to boot up and be ready to shoot. This feels like a mirrorless camera, so that's amazing.
And usually what people say about that,
rotating grip.
People often just write that off as like, oh, it's a cinema camera. Like you're supposed to have to wait. That's just how these things work.
Right.
But you don't necessarily have to wait. Like that's not. I don't buy that.
Right. Yeah.
It does make you shoot worse. You take less shots. You lose shots.
Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite shots, even on commercial projects, were the shots that we saw at the last minute, or we saw something happening from a different angle, and you just want to grab a shot quickly. Even some like projects I've worked on that were on cinema cameras, some of my favorite shots came from a 5D Mark III in 7200, just because someone's like, oh, that'd be a cool shot, a cool detail. Bang. And they'll just punch in, boom, there's the image. You can't do that. Well, you couldn't before this.
No, it totally. And even more than that, the thing that really sold it to me, like when I was testing this out before I bought it, was reviewing media as well. So as long as the camera is on, you hit the media button and almost instantly it's there. Like there's a split second delay, but the C200, you turn it off.
Well, you have to turn it off. It takes like 5 seconds to power off. Yeah.
And then 5 minutes to turn back on.
Yeah. So the whole process meant I almost never reviewed media on the C200. Actually, almost never. I had one button set to review last clip just in case I needed to.
Yeah, I did that.
But that was just to avoid having to use the media section. So this camera is what I liked about a cinema camera, but adopts a lot of what I liked about shooting on a mirrorless camera, that it's fast and responsive and, it's a good shot grabber.
And that's why I didn't go for the red in the end, is I knew I would get less good shots or I would miss more good shots. Like less good things would happen if I stayed on.
Right. Your shots might be better. You might have an image you like more.
Occasionally.
In general, but you would miss more shots.
Yeah, totally.
But as far as like buttons and dials, I'm glad they're all here. They're terribly functional right now.
I could use even more, to be honest.
Sure, but like the rear thumb dial that every Canon DSLR ever has been aperture, you can't set to aperture.
Oh yeah, that's super weird. So arbitrary.
That's like an iconic Canon way of controlling a camera. Every pro body does it, and it's the only thing on this camera you can't customize. You could probably customize the power switch to do something if you wanted to. Everything can change, except the thing they've always done. That is maddening. And
so strange, totally.
This function dial here.
Are you touching the really small one?
The really small one that it's technically has clicks, but if you just
feels
hold the camera,
it feels like it's broken. Like it's so loose that it's like it feels like a scroll
broken.
wheel that like on my mouse I could just spin this and it keeps spinning forever.
Scroll.
It's like that.
That's exactly what it feels like. And
No,
a friend of mine
it's
borrowed this
totally
camera
wrong.
this past week for a shoot, and I didn't have aperture set up anywhere on the camera because I needed other settings more. So if I had to change my aperture, I would like open the touchscreen or whatever. But that was annoying him.
You
So
take
he
off the
remapped
lens,
my
bring out a
buttons.
screwdriver. Yeah.
Yeah, he remapped my button so that aperture was on the top, and then he set ISO to that function wheel. And for a day before I realized this, I knew he had changed the top. I was like baffled. Like, why am I shooting at 64 or like 10,000 ISO outside right now? And it's because your hand just touches it and it infinitely scrolls.
Yeah, it shoots off. Totally.
It's a horrendous.
That is bad.
Horrendous.
Also,
style.
the nipple on the back is worse than others. It's not as good as the R5 physically. Like
No,
when
I
you're
don't
trying
get
to
why they don't
press
just
it in to
share a
select
parts
something.
bin.
Yeah, it is a little bit worse, and it's a more expensive camera. It's like, actually, in general, this was an impression I had afterwards. I was like, I would have rather this be a slightly more expensive camera, actually, and just have fit and finish
Yes.
improvements.
Of the
it's
R5,
like,
yeah.
Yeah,
I
give
can
me
rage about this right now.
give me SDI
Okay,
instead
look
of
at this.
HDMI.
I don't know
Give
if you
me
But the build of the quality. So I mean, you'll see I've got some gaff tape on the top here. That's because my
that's to keep it all together so it
that
doesn't fall
locator
apart.
pin. No, my the sensor locator pin thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I came in here one day and it was wiggling. And so I threaded it off, and then the part it threads into just dropped into the camera. it just shakes around in my camera right now.
That
and
is
I don't recall ever dropping it. I don't recall
not something I want to
anything.
happen.
No, I don't recall something being dropped onto this. Maybe it happened when I wasn't here, but even still, the fact that that's already happened, and then also the screen mechanism always feels like it's going to break. Let's see if you want to hear this.
Yeah. Oh, mine's not doing that
it
yet,
just makes-
but the rental one did that.
Yeah,
hope mine never
it
does.
barely. It also doesn't even close. It doesn't. The screen doesn't.
It's awful.
Close.
You're torturing me.
It's like 3 times the price of my R6, and feels like a camera that costs a third of the R6. And that's a frustrating thing.
There's this real weirdness between it where it's like they kind of made a high-end pro camera in a lot of ways. Like putting that C300 Mark III sensor on there. This is a professional, like real professional camera. It is Netflix approved.
This really
for a
is
reason.
the 1DC that we always wanted.
Yeah, and like you could
It's a
shoot, you
camera of
really
that
could
caliber.
shoot. Yeah, you could shoot a movie on this. Like, and
Oh, for
image
sure.
quality wise, it would pass as a Netflix show or whatever. But it is weirdly, just kind of missing some of those little things that you're like, they like let it be a little prosumer in a way that I don't think was helpful.
Yeah, just in the build. And to an extent, the fact that it does have a very large chunk of the image and features of a C300, I get that corners had to be cut somewhere because it cost, half as much? I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. You can't make it exactly as good.
Right. But I think this is what you're saying. It probably would have done better to be a more expensive camera.
Yeah.
Just to make it feel more like
Just a
what a
little more,
1D feels like.
Yes. That's
new
the
joysticks or
perfect
whatever.
comparison. It looks just like a 1D, right? The body looks like a 1DX.
Right, but it feels like a
And-
T2i.
Yeah, no, exactly. Totally.
That's an exaggeration
Anyway,
just for everyone.
I
It feels
do
better
still
than a
love it, but-
Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera.
Sure.
I'll
Yeah.
say
And
this feels like
much more usable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so the Blackmagic cameras, I think they have stunning image. It's so good. I don't get why they're, $1,500 cameras. Make it $3,000. Make it
Yeah, how are you doing this?
$4,000 and put it in a thing that feels good and is usable. This camera feels a little bit like that at a higher end. So it's
Right.
built better, but it should be built even better.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's a C70.
Totally agreed.
But
That's the
otherwise,
C70.
it's the 1DC I always wanted. It's a
Yeah.
camera that I can put in normal backpacks in a way that a 1D actually can't. You need a pro-sized backpack. This will fit
Or
in
C200.
pretty much anything. Yeah,
I mean,
but you gotta take
that's
the
like a
top handle
game-changing
off.
thing for me. So, well, I never used the built-in
Oh yeah,
C200 top handle.
Right.
I always did my own build for it
but you
because
couldn't
of
fit
things
that
like
in a
that.
normal bag.
So I could fit it in my backpack, actually. I had a way of being able to tear it down until I rigged it up. I put a cage on it and then I can't fit it in anything anymore. But yeah, I could, but it's like the whole bag was consumed by the C200 and I just stopped traveling with it. So not that I traveled much at all, but I was doing jobs, like good commercial jobs that were either in the States or Mexico or whatever. Like we traveled a few times and I'm like, I got to leave this at home. Like it's going to be a problem bringing it for this. So I was shooting it on Sony's and small Sony's and smaller Canons. And like, why am I doing this when I have this big sexy thing? This will come with me everywhere.
If you brought an R5, you'll bring this now.
Yeah. This is the most no excuses camera I've ever had, where it's like, it is going to work in every environment I shoot pretty much. So.
Yeah. And not to say anything necessarily about the FX3, because that's a whole other conversation. But I'm glad they still kept with the BPA 30 and BPA 60 battery abilities.
100%.
And they didn't do some using the LPE6s or even using 2 of the LPE6s. I like that I have one battery option that keeps it small and compact and still records for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. But I just have one big battery, which is it's always charged. If for some random reason I'm going to shoot for a full day and I only want to bring one battery, that's the one. I love being able to just juice the heck out of it.
So I'm thinking of picking up that, I'd actually totally forget the brand name, but on B&H, there's this one other battery that has D-tap out of the back. So you can power your monitor or other USB peripherals from one battery with the C70 and no V-mount, no like rails, no big extensions. I'm very tempted to pick that up, just to clean up especially the monitor rig, because with the monitor I've got the batteries on the front, and since there's no back on this camera's almost like front only. It's so shallow. So I don't want the monitor batteries to be on the front. Put a slightly bigger battery on the back. It'll pull it back a bit, run powered everything.
Right.
Are you rigging it up with anything else? Or you
No, not much. In fact, I pretty much threw that top handle out the second I got it.
Oh, I hate
that is the
handle.
Worst piece of garbage.
Same on the C200. It was awful.
But the plastic on this one, it hurts to be near. I can
walk
walk in a room and know right away if that handle is around.
Everybody else complained about all of the plastic on this. That specifically didn't bother me too much. I'd super recommend the wooden cameras, the wooden camera top handle. If you vamp for 30 seconds, I'm going to pick it up.
If I vamp. What's up, vamp? I mean, I don't know how Tyler didn't hate that handle. Oh, you're right. You're back.
See, I've got the wooden camera one in my hand, but
that is so much better.
It's like very small. Like it's smaller than most handles actually, and I've heard some people say it's a little too small for their hand. This currently, I also have the monitor. What do you call this? A joint on the front of it. But if you have just the handle, it's like itty bitty. You can always have it in the same kit, and it just screws onto the top, like it goes into the circle of the where the cold shoe is, and now all of a sudden you've got a top handle and like nothing else. So it's like extremely minimal. And basically, I'm thinking I'll have 2 setups where it's like either I run vlog style with let's say the Deity Duo 4. Whatever that's called, the new one, which I love for vlogging lately. That's like the vlog version.
That's all I use, really. Yeah.
Or I pop that off and I stick the monitor on, and that's the cinema version.
Yeah. I think that's there is so much to love about this camera. In fact, one of the things that I actually did miss when I left the C200 for the R5, not for the R5, it was kind of a whatever. That was a life decision on being a minimalist. I missed having 4-channel audio. There are just times when I wanted to run 2, Sennheiser, what are those digital wireless lavs? But I'd run 2 lavs into XLR and want to have a Rode Video Mic X or something on top to have some of that imagery of the sound. So I had a few projects where I'd be walking with 2, talent members in a city, and I wanted clean audio of them, but I wanted to also have that ambient track just to be able to mix in and stuff. So
I need to start doing that more often.
All the audio
built in. Something I
in.
don't do as often as I would like to.
But I think in this camera, that 4-channel audio is only some codecs and not others. That might only be the whatever.
Oh,
one.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think some codecs actually lose that ability. I finally picked up a Rode Wireless Go for the first time in my life. And the next day they announced the Wireless Go 2. Literally the next day after my mic arrived. So
I mean,
you're welcome, everybody,
is that
for
a thing
me
you would
bringing
use
that
much?
on. I'm thinking of using it a lot more in the field for myself, like when I'm doing on location audio, because there's been a lot of the times that I've been limited, like where I stand relative to the camera. I'm only close to the camera, so the mic sounds good. Like I'd rather be 4 feet away, but I'm like, well, it's noisy around here. I have to stand inches away from the mic, and that's stupid. That's not how I should be making those decisions. So
I think I want to say it was Gene, Potato Jet's video on this, maybe on the Road Go or on the C200. One of them, he was showing how they'll often use it as an extra audio source, and they'll just put the transmitter and the receiver on the C200, just so that when like whoever's holding the camera at the time is talking, they have that audio, because the built-in audio on the C200 is garbage, like that scratch track, and I don't even think you can choose it as an audio file. So I don't think you can run XLRs in and have that.
I like the idea of just having 2 mics always going on it. Like I'd like to kind of have a rig version as well that has the wireless and the vlog style mic all together, but it's also got to look neat. I see too many people that like they post their rigged up version and it's becoming tentacles, like going in every weird direction. It's like, no, there needs to be symmetry and balance. I guess this
I
has
don't
to
want to
feel
pick
good.
it up and get wires stuck in my fingers and feel like I'm going to rip something out. Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
I've been looking everywhere to get mini, like right angle mini XLR cables, and they are.
There's not many mini XLRs out there
is a company,
in general.
Yeah, there is a company in the States. I forget what they're called. They do make them. It's like a really nice, like low profile, right angle mini XLR to like a nice thin cable to full size. It's exactly what I want. They don't ship to Canada, so.
My mic. Man, the thread.
Did you just break it?
Yeah, it just fell off. My mic literally fell off my hand. Okay, Marco, mark this timestamp because we're going to have to edit it out. Okay, now you really have to vamp because I need to unplug my mic to screw it back in. So, Jesse, fill the time.
You're like Hollywooding it. You're Hollywooding with the mic. You want me to take mine off and we can just, we'll just go handheld. Why don't more people use SM58s for podcasts? You know what I mean? Just 2 people sitting on a couch holding a 58. I think that'd be great. Oh, literally, when Tyler said you should vamp for a bit, he meant no one can hear him. He doesn't exist anymore. What should we say about Tyler? What I can say is Tyler's images always look better than mine. I should pick his brain a lot more about the whole color correction process. If you ever come to my YouTube channel to learn about color correction, don't do it.
I watched your color video. I think the threads are stripped on my mic mount, actually. I think I have to...
I mean, my color video
it's about to fall off at any moment.
I don't know what to do. Here's what I do. If you like what it looks like, that's what you can do.
All right. Well, now that we've thoroughly gone off topic, I still want to... How long have we been going, Marco? How much longer do you have, Jesse? I don't know the time because I can't see anything from where I'm sitting.
Oh, it's 9:30. I'm all right now.
Okay, like 15 more?
Yeah, I got 15
Just
more.
About bullshit? Okay, so now we'll resume the new edit point. This is where the podcast picks back up. Okay, now that we've gone way off topic, let's use that as an opportunity to change the topic. How's it going? I almost want to just like talk about what is actually on my mind a little, and I don't even know how useful this is to the audience because I don't know what everybody makes that listens to this. Like, I have a bit of an idea of the split between photographers and filmmakers. I've been talking about so much video lately that I'd be surprised if any photographer-only listeners are sticking around. Right. But I also wonder how many YouTubers are out there. I want to talk about YouTube for a second because I have been frustrated with my YouTube, especially like last year. I think I was talking about this. I've talked about it a couple times where I'm like, I know I don't have a real strategy. And I think you end up in this boat too. And this ties into the other topic that I think a thing we have in common, and I don't know if you can talk about it in detail, but is the inability to focus on things. I'd love to talk about that like is in a personal way, but when it comes to the channel, I know it's also a bit of a problem that like when people, I don't know why people are always going to show up. It's like, what's the thing that I'm always offering you? And every time you come by, you're going to get it. And I think there isn't enough. I don't have much clarity on that. And I also know that the things that I get excited about, which are like higher end professional video than what I am currently doing. And the problem is that niche is smaller is very narrow because like,
yes, right.
how many people are doing high end stuff? You know, it's not a lot. So
Yeah, you're not going
I
to get
shouldn't go
a
further
million
into
views
that.
on a video. That's super niche. I mean, and also, if you were ever going to go niche on camera stuff, too bad. Gerald London did it. He beat
Sure,
us.
yeah,
He
yeah.
wins.
And I'm
If
not
you
going to go
need
that
the right
technical. I'm never
information,
going to,
for sure.
Yeah, I'm never going to dive that
if you
deep.
just need all that, he can do it.
So it's
but
like,
yeah, I'm
I don't know.
equally
How have you been feeling about YouTube lately?
mostly lost. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We were tweeting about it.
Really,
That's why I was like bringing it up, because this conversation was already happening on Twitter.
I think, man, I mean, this maybe goes a little too deep. I think pandemic times this last year, it just, everyone is naturally more self-reflective, and we're all just either doubling down on things that we're always a little bit interested. I mean, I saw 100 people this year be like, this is my year, I'm getting back into making music, a thing I've always been passionate about, right? You see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the inverse is happening, where people are starting to wonder, hey, what is in my life that I would want to change, or that could, use some shifting, or that I would want to remove from my life. So I think naturally, if you're a YouTuber this year, you've probably thought more about the direction of your channel than other years. I think that's safe to say, right?
Yeah, and I think is a healthy thing to do. Like,
yeah.
There are some. If there's any upside to the pandemic, it's been that I think there has been a lot of time for reflection for all of us, and priority sorting.
Agree, So for me, that process of a lot of self-reflection has been leading to, what do I want to see more of in the world? Right? I know, and I've known forever, I'm not a entrepreneurial person. My brain doesn't go to how do I build this. My brain goes to how can I enjoy myself the most right now. It's very, I don't know, selfish monkey brain.
Another thing I've read and totally believe is that introspection also correlates negatively with happiness. Like spending a lot of time reflecting can definitely end up, what I had heard.
The opposite of ignorance is bliss.
Exactly.
It's like
people that are more self-aware are more aware of the problem. Like you become aware of the problems.
Yes.
And if you just like let things float over your head, you feel you do just enjoy life a little more. So
I would even argue that it's sadder because you realize the problems are like just things in you that are really hard to change. You're like, oh, I'm not just sad because like I'm fighting with people. I'm sad because something about who I am starts fights. Right? It's
totally,
You're self-aware
because
it makes it worse.
Yeah, for sure. Or whatever specific thing.
So this is what I want to put on my YouTube channel.
Sure, yeah.
But no, I realized that I know there are video topics I could do that would get more views, right? There are safer bets and wider audiences that you can appeal to. And I'm actually not knocking going that route at all. I just don't know if that's the route that I want to go. And so,
to be clear, that is the route that I'm thinking about. That is what I'm specifically talking about doing. So,
and that's that's what I'm saying though. Is it's not a one way or the other. I think I'm realizing that my personality type just doesn't lead to that. I rarely look at my analytics. I don't really think about that stuff. I just like having fun making videos, and I got to work on that. I do need to get smarter and better about it. But what I'm learning this year is like I want to make more videos that I want to make just because I want to make them, and not just because I know there's an audience that would consume that.
Well, how do you end up feeling when you make that video that you wanted to make, and then inevitably you put so much extra work into it that the return on investment, that the views are not what you would hope for, and your heart sinks because like, man, this is the one I put my heart and soul into and nobody watched it. Instead, they watched that garbage that I just tossed out in 30 seconds.
Right.
Or is that just me?
Like,
I think this is
iPhone
universal,
portrait
right?
mode. Right. You get every iPhone portrait mode video gets a bajillion views, right?
I didn't know that. I got to be making more of those. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. No, but
Yeah.
You're not pouring your soul into that. Probably.
Totally.
I bet a few people do, but I'm certainly not, speaking for myself. So what do you do about that? I don't know. I think it's important and helpful to try and disconnect your success from your actual value, right? It's the more you obsess over it, the more that you're aware of those things. I think it just makes more sadness. I think it's not necessary. I mean, it can signal like you should change and there's what things that you need to fix, but it can
Mm-hmm.
also just signal nothing,
Yeah.
nothing at all.
Tough things to like recognize in terms of like how happy you're going to be with your work or what you do is also, kind of finding those like what is slowing me down here. And so specifically when it comes to like YouTube viewership, I think there are people that do exactly what they want and have a great time doing it. You're just talking about Gene Potato Jet. I think he loves what he does, and it happens to be something that people love to watch him do. And there's a lot of creators like that, right? Like their personality syncs up very well with what everybody wants to watch. Like just
Yep.
it all comes together just right. And so there are other people that are like excellent at doing the thing, but they love to do it, but it doesn't resonate on a wide scale, and it doesn't become something that everybody can rally behind. And it's like having some awareness of that, is your limitation that you're not optimizing your thumbnails and titles correctly, or is it that like, for me, like part of it's that I have always wanted a bit of my personality to not be fake high energy, because there's there's a whole lot of the transparently inauthentic, like I'm just putting on the show and I don't actually feel very happy right now on YouTube.
Yes, I mean, we have performers. They're a thing that exists in society, and not in just a negative way. Performing is a thing we value.
Sure.
And it's fine that people do that on YouTube.
And it's just not a thing I want to do myself. But it's good. It's good when that extra energy shows up, but it doesn't always. Like I have to kind of be. I have to be into it. I gotta have to have had 3 coffees first. And if if it's not there, then like I don't end up liking the work. So yeah, I don't know how that like translates to a universal truth, but it's like it's good to be aware of those things. You got the energy. You got the juice.
No, I mean I have the juice because I only turn the camera on when I have the juice.
Sure. Right.
I don't know how to put myself into that place. I'm really not good at that. So I was just saying, like, I have 2 young kids. I have a wife. We're going through renovations. It's like you have days where it's just bad. You woke up sad, or your kids are like just screaming at you for no reason. You just wake up being screamed at, and my brain goes like, well. There goes the whole day, because I can't just show up the camera and be like, wow, blah, blah, right? When my insides are just like, or I don't know. I don't always have the juice.
So, okay. The other thing that we have that I've been thinking about, and you slightly talked about it, so I have no idea how much you want to talk about this openly, but is sort of is attention. I mean, generally you'd mentioned that you were looking at ways to sort of focus your attention, potentially with some sort of attention deficit issues. I don't know how you want to talk about it, but I think about this personally a lot. So
the brief story
and
is
I'm sure
that,
somebody listening is.
Everyone in my life forever has told me I have ADHD. And I've had no desire to ever look into it or do anything about it because I just felt fine. I felt like it wasn't negatively harming me. My business was doing okay. I felt quite happy and in a good place. So it didn't matter to me until it started to feel like it was actually harming my ability to grow as an individual, my ability to run my business, my ability to just pay attention to time and be a dad and a husband who shows up when he says he's going to show up, right? Because time is something I have a very hard time with. I just lose track of it constantly. So I had read this thread on Twitter where someone basically reframed what ADHD was to me. And my brain was like, oh, maybe I should look into this. So I had a meeting with a psychiatrist and then also my family doctor and ran some tests. I basically did some quizzes. And they're like, yeah, you have ADHD. So for the past 2 months now, this has been a maybe 6-month process to get here. The past 2 months, I've actually been taking medication, and it's been a mixed bag. I'm making a video about it, and it's probably not going to be a good video because so far all the clips are just me in the morning taking my medication. So I don't know how that's going to be a video. Yeah. But, I mean, even along the lines of like content that I want to make, this is something I actually want to do and is something I'd like to see more of because I think as someone who never was interested in looking at ADHD and then suddenly was, anytime I would find videos or Twitter threads from people that had had that experience, I found it incredibly helpful. And it actually made me want to learn more, more about how I can help myself, whether that's medication or whatever, but just to be better me. So I am making this video, and I'm excited about doing that. And I have no idea what it's going to be or how I'm going to make it, but
no rush.
Yeah, focus is very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, what I had done so far was I had the quiz with the doctor, and it was right before, it was right during the beginning of the pandemic. I think it was like the first week anybody put on a mask. So I was like in a doctor's office doing a quiz, and then I just didn't really go back to doctor's offices for a while. So it kind of got, like, the idea got dropped, and it wasn't as clear cut for me. It wasn't like, oh, you're clearly ADHD. It's like, no, you've got some very clear elements of it. Other things, you know, don't really resonate as much traditionally, but like you probably would see some pretty clear benefits from some kind of medication. You know, I just like, I'm very hesitant to do any kind of medication for any reason, which is like such a big topic. Like anybody's choice to have, you know, introduce a new chemical into their brain is like a big decision. But I do keep thinking about it because like I definitely can see the ways that it makes me do less or makes me less happy with my work than I could be, because like, I opened up, I did this today. I opened up Facebook because I needed to set up my ad account for a client for Instagram. And instead I browsed Facebook for about 5 minutes. It wasn't too bad, but it's like, and I closed Facebook.
Right.
I'm like,
but
what the hell?
You
What was
do
that for?
However many times in a day, right? And it does
So
start
many times.
It compounds up, right?
Sure.
My actual fear of making this video is that I understand it's a complex issue, and I'm fully aware and kind of agree with people on both sides.
Sure.
My general gut is I don't want medication. I know I have like a somewhat addictive personality. If I were to get into video games, that's all I'm gonna do. So I have a fear of that, and I know that for a lot of people, medication just is what they need, and I think that we should be more positive, encouraging towards that, so that the people who need help can get help. And I think the people that don't need help shouldn't get help.
It's tough to talk about because what's the opposite of a universal truth? There's no, it is just so different for everybody. You know, like you got to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
But you know, the fact that we have anything in common with it, I think is helpful to at least bring it up. You know, like I'm sure there's other people. Obviously we're not the only ones that have thought about this. So
this is funny. When I've thought this for a while. It seems like a lot of people that work in our field and do similar things feel like they resonate with that. So my first meeting with my family doctor, who was just becoming my family doctor then, she didn't know what I did. She didn't know I was a YouTuber. And we had done the quizzes and stuff. And she was like, oh, like, you know, she was, yeah, of course you do kind of reaction. It was nice and it was funny. But she was saying like, you'll never meet somebody who has undiagnosed ADHD that's an accountant. It's just, it doesn't happen. And she was saying they'll almost always, if it's in their control anyways, right? They're not becoming accountants because they just love accounting. You'll see them almost always leaning towards more artistic professions, more spaces where they have control. And I was like, oh, I'm a YouTuber. And I was like,
I'm a walking cliche.
I know, I am the epitome of like, I mean, I chose a job where I get to
you could have been a
TikToker.
TikToker.
Yeah, I mean, I might be next year. Who knows?
Vertical.
Maybe that's the future.
Yeah, I mean, I really see it like that example is so perfectly exemplified with my wife, who was an accountant, you know, up until, you know, when we started working together, started doing this kind of creative stuff full time. But she is whatever the opposite of ADHD is, that's her, you know, like she absolutely can focus and keep 10 things in her head at once. And so
sounds awesome.
I mean,
it sounds
so
amazing.
On my side, it's very helpful to have somebody around that can do that. But on her side, it's like, well, it just means I'm the one dropping the ball all the time. So, you know, I also like, I don't like that. You know, I want to be able to, when I sit down to do something that it's finished at the end of doing it, you know, I don't know, like that grown up stuff. I know I'm fully on board. And so my wife is also very much
like that. And it's amazing because the only reason a calendar exists in my life at all is because of her. So she's so good at keeping those things in her head. But the way I think this often happens in couples where you yin and yang each other, is that for her, keeping those things in her heads and always be thinking about like what to do in order for the things forward to line up as best as they could means she struggles sometimes to be in the present. And she gets like easily anxious in the moment because a thing later needs to be dealt with.
Yeah,
which
100%.
is, and that can be a downfall. Whereas I have a much easier time. It's how I lose track of time all the time, just completely being present. And this sounds like I'm really being like I'm the good one, but no, my life would probably fall apart if it wasn't for that. I have Emma and other people in my life that care enough to, push me towards being better. We just need each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wish I had more of that one.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, there's, for anybody in a relationship, it's like, it's easy to like, fall back on the like, oh, well, she's better at doing the dishes, so she does the dishes. It's like, well,
right.
Maybe we should practice doing the dishes a little more,
Totally. You're right.
Yeah. By the way,
that's what I'm saying. I need to be the better at that. That's the thing is I don't want to be the person who's just like, oh, I don't do the dishes. I'm in the moment, and my moment is chips on the couch. Right? That's a bad person.
It's worth mentioning that how many attempts did it take us to find a date and time that we were able to record this together?
Well, I don't know. The last year,
our wives should have just talked to each other and scheduled their time for us. Maybe.
Oh my goodness,
would have happened sooner.
My wife has done that with friends of mine's wives, and that's kind of embarrassing. That's not a good trait of mine.
This all reminds me. I feel like I'm running out of your time, so I'm gonna leave this on a recommendation that I was watching. I was just kind of into Ricky Gervais lately, and I'm like, oh yeah, he had that like Netflix show, Afterlife, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what the premise was. I was just like, oh okay, I like him. He's funny, and I started watching it, and basically it's about him and his wife died. And it's very dark and funny, obviously, but his wife died and he's basically suicidally depressed. But like going through that process of like losing the half that is keeping you going was like, wow, like it just hit me like a ton of bricks in a smart, thoughtful, heartfelt Ricky Gervais kind of way. I mean, it's not just so like, nice. Yeah. So if you got to be in not a bad play. If anybody out there is like really depressed from the pandemic, don't watch this. But like, if you're up for something just like thoughtful and funny and can also give you some warm fuzzies. Afterlife.
I mean, we were kind of like knocking on pretentious cinematography people. That's what they care about. I think pretentious cinematographers at their best are people that want to cultivate an experience like that for you.
Yeah.
Right. That want you to be able to empathize with someone and see contemplate what it would be like to lose the half of you that keeps you together.
Totally.
And I think that's so noble.
That's the point of art. I mean, like I know some people that aren't into fiction. Actually, it's Anya's mom. Just like fiction's like not her thing. She's like, if it's not based on true story or it's not a documentary, it's not interesting. And I'm like, to me, the argument that I've tried to make is like, the point of fiction and art is it's exercise. Like it's lifting weights for your brain
it's an
to imagine.
Exercise,
to go through like, what if this happens? What about when this happens?
Yes,
Like being more prepared for death of loved ones. For great example. And it's like as you watch other people go through extreme emotional extremes, is like it prepares you for those and gives you more tools to be ready for when they happen. And it's not that you're learning based on what the characters do in the movie necessarily. It's much more that you imagine yourself into that role and you're like, how would I deal with that if I end up in that situation? And same with music as well. But
I mean, I think you could probably make it like a good evolutionary argument for that, for, having that imaginative flexing of your mind, helping you project forward, because storytelling it's a historical necessity, and not just, true stories about the past, but allegories and, fictional stories have been tools that humans forever have used. And so it seems like it's probably important if we've held it up till now. I think it's beautiful art.
The next social media platform that rips off stories, I think they should name the feature allegories. That'd be nice.
Right, but you can only actually be deep on it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to go deep, and I'm glad you finally made it back on the show, Jesse. And I hope you come back again next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, dude. I'm glad it finally worked out after months and months.
Forever.
And months.